What's up, light fans and cannabis activists alike? We're back with another edition of My Marijuana Chronicles, sponsored as always by our good friends at O2 Vape. Make sure you go ahead and check them out at o2vape.com and use promo code MyMMAnews at checkout for 20% off of your order. The most innovative vape technology available. Check them out. On this edition, we have a very good friend of ours, returning guest, UFC veteran Elias Theodorou, who just took out fellow UFC veteran Matt Dwyer at Rise Fighting Championship 6, and it was the first time Elias was able to utilize his therapeutic use exemption in his native British Columbia, and we just couldn't be happier for him. He's here to talk about the win, he's here to talk about some upcoming projects, and he's here to talk about the continuing fight to destigmatize cannabis. Check it out. This out. Elias Theodorou, how are you, brother?
I'm fantastic, bro. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. So awesome. Congrats on the win against Matt Dwyer, former UFC veteran just like yourself. It was your first fight since 2019. How did it feel to get back in there, first and foremost?
It felt great. Obviously, it's what I do. It's what I love to do. Obviously, in addition, the delays in regards to COVID, as we've all been kind of dealing with, that was its own process in its own right, on top of the aspect of, finally getting my therapeutic use exemption and validating it through a competition and against a great fighter, like you mentioned, Matt Dwyer, and, having it all together, both as the athlete and as the co-promoter for the event, in a kind of interesting and first of its kind way. So, there are a lot of firsts, and also the capacity of, the fact that our protocols were what actually got combat sports approved in Canada, post COVID, and to the fact that now in BC, where my last fight was, many other organizations are actually opting out to go to BC because it's the only jurisdiction that's actually holding events. Hopefully that'll change in the coming months and weeks as COVID's gets essentially dealt with through vaccination and just overall herd immunity. But again, there are different organizations that are now different fighters and organizations that are only able to compete because of, the hard work that I and my team put together. So, even beyond, the component of, the fight, the fight itself, the metaphorical fight in regards to, the stigma of medical cannabis. And then also, again, defeating, the gridlock that was, in all of combat sports in Canada. So happy for what I did for myself, but also for others.
Congratulations again. It was so many wins on your end, and history was made, man. So how did it feel finally getting to utilize your medicine, your therapeutic use exemption, and get to perform in the cage and not have to worry?
Honestly, cathartic in some ways, because again, you asked about 19. I haven't fought since 2019. I had opportunities to fight at large organizations, but what I wanted to do was finish what I started and get my cannabis sanction validated in BC, and I did, and then get a therapeutic use exemption approved in the States, which I now have recently done in Colorado again. And I look to validate that once more there or any other jurisdiction that I end up getting approved in for cannabis. And we'll see what 2022 entails, but the kind of game plan is to then talk to some of the larger organizations and kind of plan that route, but very much focused on continuing to win and continuing to win inside the cage and out as I get further jurisdictions, being the knockout punch to some of the restrictions in other jurisdictions.
And I was going to say, does this lead does it leave an opening for you to branch out for the other organizations like you were just talking about? Because you're in a really good place, man. You're 18-3, 2-fight win streak and 2 stoppages at that. So with that said, I mean, you're in a very good place to pick and choose where you can fight and what you want to fight for. So with that being said, are you adamant fighting where you can absolutely use your TUE, or or else?
I definitely say I am. I'm doing that right now. Where that will be after I validate my next therapeutic use exemption in regards to whether it's Colorado or another jurisdiction, and then if I do that, plant the flag not only for myself but other athletes and the precedents that does. Who knows where the U.S. will be in the capacity of legalization and it recognizing cannabis either as a medicine as I'm fighting for, or just overall not tested anymore. We obviously saw this weekend over the course of fight week how Nate Diaz was able to medicate able to smoke weed at the presser, and that was in part because Arizona was only going to test it like they test alcohol if you're impaired during the competition, and that's kind of what I have with my therapeutic use exemption. But I think the avid caveat is the fact that one, my case, it's recognized as a medicine for what it is, and also two, the capacity of even beyond USADA that I was applying for, but the commissions, because they're actually run by the state and provincial government. That's actually another foundation of medical cannabis rights. So BC runs the BC Commission. So BC approves therapeutic use exemptions like mine, which is again recognized by that provincial government. Now too, with the state of Colorado. And it's a little bit ironic because of the fact that, when I was in the UFC, I was applying for a therapeutic use exemption through USADA, and USADA is actually headquartered in Denver. So I got a no in Denver, but a yes in Colorado 5 years later.
Wow, the irony of that, right?
Yeah.
So for the people that don't know, obviously it has to be very, very intricate. Can you detail the process, this long fight of going through the process of getting your TUE?
Yeah, it's just a lot of doctors, and especially with USADA and whatnot, it was I essentially had to try every other drug under the sun just to kind of exhaust everything, to the point where, again, my family doctor, because I did this through my family doctor, because he's the one that prescribes me medical cannabis. He's known me my whole life, like essentially since I was like 2 or 3. He knows me better than I know, essentially my body, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So to the point where USADA was giving me this laundry list of drugs that you had to do. And originally we did it for 21 days, which was 3 weeks. And then they would say, no, can you do it for 9 weeks? And then they'd be like, no, can you do this version of that drug? Can you do this version of that drug? To the point where my doctor's just scratching his head and it's like, yeah, we haven't suggested this since like the 90s when we realized it was dumb to do this. And then that's how far along, they were at the time in regards to the stigma and kind of looking at cannabis in such a negative aspect, because again, it's still Schedule 1 drug nationwide. So it's looked at with no medical properties. And that was the uphill battle that I was fighting. Obviously, then fast track to the fact that when I became a free agent, I became an agent of change in a different way, where I could actually apply through certain jurisdictions like BC and fight more specifically at home for it to be recognized as a medicine afforded to me by my fundamental right as a Canadian to medicate as prescribed by my doctor. So it kind of worked out in the long run. How I mentioned Denver to Colorado, and also again no longer with a U.S. U.S. company. I was able to take my fight back home and win on the merits and win on medical equality.
Now, I'm curious, just because the advancements that are being made every single day, there's state by state being knocked down between medical and recreational and everything. So I wonder, do you think it's more prominent, a better route to go through maybe the TUE route? Or do you think in a couple of years that we're not even going to have to worry about this problem either way?
Hopefully I think it's a little bit of both. One, it's, again, the importance of having cannabis recognized for medicine. That's, I guess, kind of what I'm doing in my fight. But overall, not punishing athletes for self-medicating or, again, putting a tarnish on their record and kind of looking at cannabis as no different as a performance-enhancing drug, which it obviously is not.
Now, I was having a conversation with one of my buddies this morning at breakfast
Mm-hmm.
because I was telling him that I was going to be talking with you. He's very familiar with MMA and your story as well. And the one thing we were talking about was the people, the spearheads, the people that are going to go down in history, like the Nick Diaz's, like you, that have just put in the work behind the scenes, put in the fight outside of the cage to keep cannabis inside of the cage, medically, of course. The only crummy part about that is there's going to be no rectifying, what may have been lost for, Nick's years out of the competition, or what you may have lost, as far as, having to tiptoe the lines, for example. So it's crummy in that way, but is there any solace or any silver lining in knowing that you were a part of the good fight to get it where it is?
Yeah, well, again, I'm very lucky in the capacity. I'm never been happier, never been healthier. The unbeaten path that I've been fighting is obviously the fruits of my labor has started to come. It took 4 years, 5 years to get the first win with British Columbia. Then only a couple months later, 6 months later, for the first one in the U.S. And I'm going to keep fighting for that cause. And I think I'm on the right side of history, being on the cannabis side of history, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. And I'm lucky enough to do what I love, both in the cage and out with a couple other projects that I'm working on. And again, I'm very much in the place that I want to be. And obviously, there's still plenty of fight left in me. I think whether it's through Colorado or whether it's through other jurisdictions that I'm applying for, validating my therapeutic use exemption. Again, kind of my unbeaten path, whether it's being both a fighter and promoter or some kind of component of that. I very much want to finish this year by finishing what I started with cannabis, and then from there kind of taking it back into the larger organizations and going for that title run, if you will, wherever it ends up being.
Have you ever thought about maybe even being like a consultant for fighters that are looking to have a therapeutic use exemption? Not obviously you're not a doctor, you can't prescribe, but the routes that they might have to take, because look how successful you've been, look how great you've been doing, and look how happy you are as far as the being medicated. Have you considered taking that route?
Very medicated, but no, definitely. That I'm in the process of actually eventually creating a non-for-profit that'll help in advocating and obviously educating and even empowering different, not only fighters, but also other athletes. Because I think fighting, because of the way it's kind of put together through the commissions and us being essentially independent contractors, there's a little bit more wiggle room in that capacity. But older, larger organizations like athletes that are in the Olympics and tested by WADA, I think there's still a bit of a delay and an uphill battle for them. So in many ways, I am looking to empower other athletes moving forward. Obviously, again, much like when people ask me, like, "Hey, why don't you teach martial arts?" So it's like, well, I'm still very much in the doing stage, right? So I'm very much in the doing stage of trying to create that change. But the definite plan is to empower other athletes. So that they can use cannabis if that's what they and their medical practitioner suggest, right? Like, again, we're bags of chemicals, and everybody and every body is different, and they need to figure out what works best for them. And medical cannabis works best for me.
Well, you're obviously a prominent figure in the fight community for medical cannabis, and with your history being made, just nothing else to say but congratulations. So moving forward, I did want to talk about your upcoming film. Can we talk about that a little bit? The Last Hit. What's going on with that right now?
Well, as with anything, COVID delays, a bunch of different U.S. actors. It's a co-treaty production, so it's actually taking partly in place in Brazil as well. Okay. So again, once these things kind of hopefully smooth over in regards to some sense of normalcy returning, I should be able to. We as a team should be able to get going on this. As I'm no stranger whether it comes to obviously the cannabis fight or just anything else. I'm committed to finishing what I started, and obviously this is another one of those things where it's been a long process, but it'll be worth it in the end.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the summary, like it's essentially about like a fighter getting ready to go into, but like computer technology. How did I read this summary? Can you clear it?
Yeah, so I'm an MMA fighter, huge stretch, and I get injured, and I reinvent myself as a competitive video gamer. Think Street Fighter, think Mortal Kombat,
right?
And it's a really interesting script. It's funny. It's kind of like Southpaw meets a little bit of The Wizard and Dodgeball, if you will. It's funny. It's a great story, well written, and I couldn't be more excited to hit the ground running.
Is your character true to life like the real Elias Theodorou? Does he medicate?
Definitely does.
I love it. So a couple of things I have for you before I let you go. Just when do you want to get back in the cage? And I would love to ask for who, but I know you have a bigger battle to fight. So I'll just leave it at when do you want to get back in the cage?
Yeah, I'm looking to fight around October 17th. That happens to be a Monday, so I won't be fighting the Monday. But that is the anniversary of legalization, and I look to be the great Canadian export as I fight in either Colorado or another jurisdiction that recognizes my right to Medicaid as prescribed by my doctor. So that's kind of my game plan moving forward. I'm actually working on a TV show and a couple other projects that I can't really mention right now. So I'm kind of busy doing that and always growing, always learning in the cage. I'm getting ready to be an even better fighter than I was in the last one. And I'm looking to, again, get that next fight. Either as promoter myself or some type of form of co-promoting as I look to make history again as the first sanctioned cannabis athlete in the U.S.
Man, you're spearheading the game of cannabis and combat sports. You're a pioneer. I appreciate every time we get to talk, man. I have nothing else for you except for tell people where to follow you, social media, because obviously they need to see their weed bay. Throw it out there.
Boom. Everyone can follow me at Elias Theodorou. It's ELIAS THEODOROU. Apologies for all the vowels, but I am Greek. So if you want to follow my journey, both as a fighter, patient, advocate, and overall, I do a little bit of memeing here and there too. So what can I say? If you want to follow my story, follow my journey, you're more than welcome to follow me.
I can't wait. Elias, congratulations once again on everything between your win on Matt Dwyer, the wins outside of the cage, everything you're doing as a cannabis activist myself, as a cannabis user myself, and a cannabis patient. I just have nothing but the utmost respect for what you're doing, and I appreciate everything you're doing. Congratulations, brother.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
There he goes, Elias Theodorou, successful against former UFC veteran Matt Dwyer, just like himself, and he is successful outside of the cage with his battle for cannabis. For Elias Theodorou, I'm Adam Christ. Make sure you keep it locked to MyMMAnews.com for all your fight news needs.